All right. Got all little technical things out of the way. Liz can't find her headphones or whatever earbuds, so
Sorry, I know. As
so
long
she'll.
as you can hear me.
I can hear you. I can hear you. We'll just do whatever we can. Sometimes it happens. All right. Welcome everyone to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, joined by, of course, Liz Matory. And if you can't figure that out, just look behind her because she's got her name out emboldened on there. Great background. I love it. Uh, so.
I got my hat on. Trigger, 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 trigger.
All right. Before we get to all the topics or some of the topics I listed on here, I want to tell you that I'm extremely jealous, or at least my wife will probably be extremely jealous, that you actually got to go to the dentist today because our dentist basically, the last time she talked with her, and my wife has got this crown that came out, so she's been dealing with this for like 3 months, and the dentist was like, call me in August.
Yeah.
It's like, and my wife actually has to keep putting the thing in or taking it out. It's just a real pain in the neck to deal with. Congratulations that at least where you live, you have a dentist that's willing to see you.
Yeah, no, that's the issue. I'm in Baltimore County. You're in Montgomery County. I think our dentist started seeing people about a month ago. We went back to church a month ago, and y'all down, 30 miles away can't do the exact same basic needs that all of us use. I had to get a darn root canal, so that's a whole nother part of my, experience. And so I'm getting, I got a filling for that. Thank goodness there was no Novocaine involved. So that's why I can speak freely. So that's a good thing. I was like, Dawn, I have a dentist appointment. I forgot. But it all worked out. So yeah, I pray that, cooler heads will prevail. I know that I'm just going to say that's the reason why illegal entrants are a problem. I'm just saying, a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but the overarching issue with Montgomery County and Prince George's County, they don't want to talk about it, but there's a huge population in those two particular jurisdictions that they cannot account for. That is something that you have to be mindful of, and they will never admit it. And they're using all these other deflective tactics to say, oh, it's the Black community. Oh, it's, people in poverty. No, the percentage of poverty in Montgomery County is literally minuscule. The population that they would never want to talk about is the huge onslaught of illegal entrants for over the last 15 years that literally have been living under the radar and whose health care needs have been difficult ever since they crossed the border illegally. So yeah, that's the issue that you have in Montgomery County. Welcome. Hope everything works out. But yeah, that's why your wife can't go to get her crown fixed.
That's interesting. Illegal entrance. Okay, yet another term in our vernacular here in terms of dealing with that.
I'm trying to work on some terms. I know illegals is really it's a touchy word for folks. They shut down. But quite frankly, if you don't like the word aliens, then illegal entrants that's a very, neutral yet descriptive word that describes the problem. They have illegally entered the country. They have stayed for now 2 generations, and everybody has to deal with the consequences.
All right, we'll get to a little bit more of that later too. But that's interesting, though. I didn't realize that where you live that you're actually able to have in-person church.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Actually, my church, I'm a member of Calvary Baptist Church, which is in Dundalk, Maryland, which is about 5-10 minutes away from me. But our pastor, as I said before, was the one who got in trouble for having in-person church before we were, quote unquote, allowed to by the county executive, John Oshefsky Jr., who literally has prayed in our pews with us and has the audacity to tell us when we are allowed to worship and not. So we have obviously we're a lot of conservatives there. We're a lot of people who are God-centered, but also we appreciate the Constitution. And at a point in time, about 6 weeks ago, our whole entire church was like, that's it. We've done it. We had social distancing. We opened up the balcony. Praise God, there are actually people sitting in the balcony now. There weren't enough before.
Are they spitting on you?
No, there was a time where most of us were wearing masks. Some people didn't. There's still a couple of elders who have health concerns, but they, for the first time, have come to church this week, but they've had their full masks on. But again, as people of faith, we think and experience life so differently. So we feel for everyone who isn't being able to come together and worship. It's not the same being online. It's not the same. We all know it's not the same. So we just hope and pray that the Lord hears our prayers and that more hearts are softened, because there's such a veil over people's eyes. There's so much pride involved that, we have a cease and desist letter that went to the administrative judge on Tuesday for us having church. So it's still a legal battle for our church, but at the same time, we are able to worship.
So I want to ask you one more thing about this, because one of the other things they talk about with with the spread of COVID-19 coronavirus is singing. So are you guys actually doing singing?
Yeah, we are singing.
I had to ask.
We're singing. We had the youth choir sing for the first time this week. We had the children's choir sing yesterday. I mean, and quite frankly, they're the reasons why I joined this church, because they inspire me. We're talking about young people who are still within church-led life. So many young people have gotten off track. It's really encouraging to see them all come together and, be under the, the shepherding of God and the Holy Spirit, because that's what it's all about. And for them to come together and to hear their voices is so meaningful. It's online if you want to check it out. we did live stream. So we have, because of this experience, we have people around the country, if not the world, watching our live streams, because, they're missing the actual singing.
I wasn't planning on going in this direction, but I am I'm fascinated by this, because, we're still, Montgomery County, we're definitely lagging behind in all of this reopening stuff. And churches are trying to sort out, what they can do. I mean, there will be a one person or one family per 200 square feet, thing going in starting 5 o'clock tonight, I think it is, when we'll be able to do that.
Okay.
I don't think our church is planning on doing anything quite yet. I think they're trying to still sort this out. But one of the things about this is that we do a decent amount of singing as well. We have choir, we have the individual singing, but this has been one of the big things from health experts, or I should say air quote health experts, about singing and how things expectorate, and all this. So even with social distancing, they were kind of discouraging that. But to me, church without praise, without singing, without being able to do that, it's really not church as much. You really need to have that. That's part of the spirit.
Yeah, well, that's what God told us to do, sing in his praises. That's what we're supposed to do. And again, that's where we drew the line. We're like, if we have worship, so we believe that this is the right way to worship our God. So therefore you are blocking us from practicing our First Amendment right. You're like, oh my word. There's and again, talking about pestilence has been around since the beginning of time, right? God's people in general have dealt with warfare. We've dealt with locusts. We've dealt with plagues. We've dealt with the bubonic, everything under the sun we've all dealt with. COVID-19 does not compare to any of the stuff that our forefathers have gone through, let alone, but what's different is that the government is the exact same as well. We are still warring against the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh still is the state. And we need more people of faith to identify who are they going to follow. It's always been that fundamental question. Are you going to follow God? Or are you going to follow man? That is fundamentally the difference. And when it comes to COVID-19 in our region, we know that heat dissipates the virus. Most viruses, especially COVID viruses, cannot survive over 85 degrees. So I don't know what the temperature is right now, but I think eventually it'll get over 85. It's going to be June. It's going to be July. It's going to be August. And oh my word, come September, that must be the most gargantuan virus ever to survive 100-degree temperatures in the swamp of the District of Columbia. But when it comes down to people in their health, if you are an elderly person and you do not feel comfortable with coming into church around a certain environment, you have your individual right not to enter that space. It's the fact that they are literally restricting the freedoms of healthy individuals to be able to make their decisions for themselves. And, oh, by the way, to praise the God that they want to praise in their way.
Yeah, and you mentioned the live stream. I think, while church is not the same, when you're just watching things or doing things online, the live stream, if you're doing actual services, that's definitely a bigger plus. I mean, I do think if there's one of those, silver linings for religion, and there really aren't a whole lot, to come out of this coronavirus thing, is that churches, I think, nationwide, if not worldwide, have learned that using Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever gives them an opportunity to spread a message far and wide beyond, their immediate borders, which can be a plus. Now, it's my understanding, though I will not be able to swear by it for our own church leadership, is that my interactions in the past about trying to do and bring the message outside of those that are actually in a congregation or in a specific building have been met with a little bit of trepidation, because part of this is that, well, we want people in the pews. We don't know who they are when they're not in the pews, and I understand that. But I think COVID-19 is going to change that dynamic in the sense that I think people who have that feeling, and churches that may have had that feeling in general, say, look, we now know that we have an elderly population that we may never see in the pews again, but we can probably teach them or show them how to do the technology and sit in their room or whatever and watch us do certain things now. We will miss them in terms of not being able to see them and do things in person, but people have to be able to take their own health into consideration, as you said. So I think we're going to see a lot of different things happening, but I think there's some good positives that happen if you can live stream and push the message out, where you're really kind of doing a more full-blown church service.
Right. And I agree, but I also want to, highlight the importance of being in connection with one another. Nothing compares to being in a shared space where you can see that person face to face. I mean, to get a hug from one of my favorite sisters and little sisters specifically, just to be able to handshake another brother, it means something. There is a spiritual connection that you have with a lot of folks that you cannot get from online. You just can't. And quite frankly, let's segue to whatever we're about to talk about. This is the issue. We have been severed from our humanity through the use of technology. People are trying to say this is the same. It's not. We are humans. We are animals, yes, but we are higher level animals that need interaction with one another, to feel love, to feel connection. That in itself is what makes us different. And so when we are restricted, we are confined, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, being away from the outside world is actually a detriment to our psyche. And not only is it a detriment to our psyche, now we're seeing how bad it was for the generation after me that didn't run around outside, scrape their knees and heal. They were sitting there playing their video games, not connected to the outside world. And all of that rage, all of the anger that they feel and that they're expressing was not well handled to begin with. And I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but I just know that there's something there when it comes to how that generation developed online versus mine, where we actually still went out and played and we still came back. What is it, the rules? Like, you can be out there, but then come home when the street lights come on. Well, when there were street lights back in the day, that was sort of the golden rule for us growing up. But we didn't, that generation after, because 9/11, because of all these other reasons, they did not get to grow fully. And unfortunately, we're seeing the ramifications of those people who literally were sheltered in place throughout their old childhood.
Yeah, no, and look, you're right on about the need to be with each other, particularly. I mean, I get a text usually about every 7 to 10 days from a young man who has some kind of learning disability. Not really quite sure what it is, but he was baptized into our faith. I guess it was November of 2018. I did not know him at that time, but I was running into him at church a lot, as we kind of have running through different congregations and stuff like that. But he is really, he's a very dedicated, but a very simple young man, in the sense of he gloms onto all of our church missionaries, and he likes being around people. And so he's texting me frequently to say, do you know when we're going back to church? And he posts on Facebook, I miss the missionaries. I want to be able to go back and take pictures. He has a gazillion pictures of them. Now, what he doesn't understand is that it will be different, because we're going to have some social distancing. If he takes pictures with the missionaries, they're probably going to have to stand a little further apart from him. There are going to be some new rules and regulations, but I think we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But he, based on what I've seen from him on his Facebook posts, he is missing it really bad. I mean, he needs this. This is for, and so he's really suffering. I mean, this is where even a person like me, I can say, yeah, I think sometimes my mental health has suffered as a result of this, and I need to go out and I need to be with people. So. Yeah,
no, I agree. But I mean, they even closed parks. Do you know what I mean? So like anything that we as humans used in order to feel connection to either each other or to nature, they literally shut down for 2.5 months. So I am, again, not surprised that everybody's wigging out, because we literally were forced into a certain amount of not only discomfort, but angst that, it depends upon how you were able to cope with that individually and as a sort of family unit. But if you don't have that self-regulation, then you were screwed, to be honest. And last note, we also have our recovery ministry on Friday nights. We haven't been able to do that, which is unfortunate, because we can't do our bus ministry because it brings kids in from the community, and so you don't know where people are coming from, unfortunately. I mean, you know where they're coming from, but they don't know what they've been exposed to, sadly. So we haven't been doing our two sort of most, I want to say, impactful ministries, because they're going really far into what we need to do. We need to go into community so that we can pull people out and make sure that they hear the positive message. And I know for a fact that when you're dealing with people who have addictions, in Maryland, for example, and this is what angered me to no end, we only closed the liquor stores for 1 week. For this entire time, the liquor stores have been open. You have been able to get an abortion down the street from where I am this whole time, except for maybe 1 week. And so when you see the influences that are out there, it's not a God-led spirit that people are being accessible to. It is the alternative, and that is the problem that people of faith have to recognize, that, it's too obvious not to pay attention to it, if you know what I mean.
Right. All right. So move on to other news. Today is Juneteenth. So yes. June 19th. Now this is interesting to me because, I didn't really know a heck of a lot about this holiday. I mean, I know that like in Texas, it's always been a big deal, and all this kind of thing. I hadn't really paid a whole lot of attention to it, but I was looking and I was surprised to find that 46 states actually recognize Juneteenth as some sort of holiday. Only 4 states, Hawaii, South Dakota, North Dakota, and Montana, do not put it on the calendar as a recognized holiday. So it's a lot bigger than I think a lot of people realize. It is getting a heck of a lot of attention because of all the, what we're going to call, what the DNC has called in an email this morning, all the racial unrest that we're having in this country. I got
Is that what they said?
Yeah, they just saw an email this morning.
To me.
Yeah. There was an email this morning, using Juneteenth as a fundraising opportunity for the DNC, and talking about the racial unrest and linking to a video on Juneteenth that you need to watch. And, they're just trying to raise money and stoke the flames, and all of this kind of stuff. But now one of the things that I've seen that's happened too is that there's also a movement to make Juneteenth a national holiday. you know, federal recognized holiday. I mean, what are your thoughts about Juneteenth? Where are we going? What's going on here?
Well, you know, I'm all for national holidays, to be honest. Like, I grew up in DC, so we got all of them off, which I love. Like, I remember, you know, moving out here in Maryland, and I'm like, wait, you don't get these holidays off? Like, because DC is a federal city, right? So we follow all of the national, you know, holidays. I don't know what that entails. If that's going to be beneficial for everyone, so be it. Obviously, it's an important moment in history. Obviously, we can study it and appreciate it. But the issue that I've had for this entire time is this, again, it's not one thing, it's everything, right? This is the tactic that they're using. Whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's Juneteenth, whether it's, you know, all of a sudden people care about diversity. Again, diversity has been an issue ever since, the 90s, where it's been a concerted effort from corporations, organizations to be able to have a more inclusive society. We've been working on it for this many years. But when any movement comes to a mainstream level, it automatically becomes compromised. As a former radical myself, that's when you start not trusting it. Eventually, the people who started it do not have the real sort of control over the message. It's been co-opted by whoever and whatever that has a bigger platform that they're now using it for their means. What their means are, I'm not quite clear on quite yet, but it is not sort of something that is from the community anymore. It is more people using it for them to feel better about themselves, as opposed to really making a difference. That's my concern. Number two is that, like many other of these so-called, I don't know, movements and or tactics over the last 4 years, the left is trying to force us all to only think about slavery and only think about when we were slaves. They literally want to, they're pushing this 1619 project, I think it is. I forgot what the actual number is, but it's instead of saying that our country was founded in 1776, they want to push back when slavery was sort of incorporated. And by doing that, as I said before, they are not allowing for the actual small p progress for all of us to appreciate. They literally are forcing every single person in the world, quite frankly, to only remember and only focus on when Black peoples were slaves and when white people were slave owners and rapists and pillage and all that. That is a disservice not only to our current life, but it literally just destroys all of the amazing hard work and lives lost, quite frankly, that got us to this point on purpose, so that we are now divided, living in fear, toking the flames of anxiety and all of the negative vibrations that are detrimental to everyone's health, let alone society. Juneteenth, sadly, has now been incorporated into that agenda that the left is trying to literally dismantle our society. Yay!
Yeah. Well, from a federal holiday standpoint, I'm generally kind of ambivalent about, national holidays. Some of my concerns about national holidays in general are, one is that how many of these do we have? I mean, I think we have 9 or 10 on the calendar already. Christmas and New Year's, and you got a bunch of these things. But how many of these do you put on the calendar, and at what cost? If you're giving federal workers pay and things like that, I mean, there is a cost to those things. That it kind of adds up. In that sense. And then, how there needs to be a limit at some point in time, because it's a lot like these school holidays we've been going through, where the Muslims want what the holiday, they want school holidays, everything like this. They want fairness and equality across it. It just starts to get kind of ridiculous, where we're starting to get to every interest group, and opens up the floodgates to where your calendar will be full of quote holidays, that type of thing. And that I think that gets to be kind of a ridiculous extreme. You mentioned the 1619 project, that thing, I don't really understand what is going on with those people, because I mean they won a Pulitzer Prize for this on top of that,
Right.
which is really ridiculous, because the work that they did from it was flawed, and it has been called out as not having been very accurate to begin with. And then yet this is the thing about the media and the Pulitzer Prize committee, is that accuracy doesn't seem to matter, but political correctness is fine. And if it fit a narrative that fit what they wanted to do. So,
Right.
they go around acting as experts on this issue of slavery and all of these other things where their information is not very good. The other part of this too, which I think you're well versed on, is just that we also have that theme of reparations that keeps coming up, and it's going to be bubbling up again, because it all fits in with all this racial narrative. And so the Democrats, we know the liberal Democrats in Congress are not going to let reparations go.
Oh, I like you just I was like, did you stop talking? Yeah, reparations. The only organizations and or institutions that owe anybody reparations are all of the New York banks that literally were founded over the backs of my ancestors. Let's be honest. The banks are the ones that are responsible, and that's all the more reason why reparations will not be paid. It's not the federal government that's responsible. It is all of the private banks that have grown, whether it's Citibank, JP Morgan, all of the things that are still in existence literally got their founding by insuring slave ships. So if you want to include history, include all of it. And a lot of those families are still a part of the 1%, the actual 1%. They are the ones that got money from the ancestry of my people. So whatever, do whatever you want to do, but make sure you get the reparations from the right organizations and institutions.
Yeah, and if you're going to do that too, I guess less like anything else, every time reparations are brought up, and get it to the right people, because it just seems that part of the narrative from my perspective is just that these reparations will need to go to all Black people, but that would be incorrect, right?
Well, yeah, well, not only that, it's, yeah, I did a live about our favorite council member, Will Derwando. Have mercy on him, Lord Jesus. Oh my word. So case in point, there are a lot of people who are in positions of power that have no connection to my ancestry. They literally, especially the people who are like Barack Obama, for example, we don't know who his real ancestry is, but let's say that his dad's Kenyan, right? His dad is from Kenya. His mom is from what is it, Nebraska, right? Whatever it was, middle of the America. And now they're using people who look like me, but aren't from the heritage. And they literally are saying, you owe this to us, but technically you are not us. And it's a very weird dynamic that's the reason why I don't really talk about it, because it's like if you really want to talk about the issues, talk about the nuance. It is so convoluted on purpose. For example, the reason why I use the word Black Americans versus African Americans or anything else is, and which is true, I don't know where my heritage is coming from, half of it. Half of it's from the Philippines, I get that. But the other half from my dad's side, on purpose, our ancestors were divided so that they did not know where they would come from, so that they wouldn't have a better sense of self, so they wouldn't have a better sense of unity. And so we literally should be calling ourselves full-blown Americans, because that is the only real identification that we can actually cling on to. But instead, the powers that be, want to focus on our skin color, which is Black, but that's not really the only heritage that we have. Our only heritage that we can actually stand firm on is our American citizenship. And that's something that Black people need to understand, but are forced not to understand on purpose. because that's where the power lies. As American citizens, we are the strongest citizens ever created on the face of the planet in the history of history. And if we particular Black people, formerly from slave descended people, honor the fact that we are now the most powerful people in the world after only 2 or 3 generations, that is a game changer. That is what inspires people in Hong Kong to rise up. It is not give me reparations. It is we want our freedom. This is what we demand. And oh, by the way, they look to our heritage for inspiration. So that is why it is more complicated than reparations, than Juneteenth, than Black Lives Matter, than all this other stuff. If we actually really stood firm in our citizenship, all bets would be off.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking as you were talking too, a couple of things. I mean, another thing about reparations is that I think it is sold largely to the communities that are involved as just money, without necessary, without any context as to why you're getting it and what the the injustice was or whatever. So I mean, you know, if they ever get to that point and they say, okay, you know, Congress finally somehow manages to pass this reparations to Black Americans and they dole this out far and wide, most of the people receiving this money really won't have any clue, but they'll gladly take the money. But the point will have completely been missed on that.
Right.
The other thing too that I was thinking about the last day or so was just that, you know, there's a lot of discussion. There's always this talk about people of color. I mean, there's even this other term, this BIPOC, you know, I can't remember what it is, Black Indigenous People of Color or something like that. I can't remember.
Oh, is that right? That's
something
a new one.
Yeah, BIPOC or whatever. But you know, semantically, aren't we all people of color? I mean, white's a color, right? I mean,
yeah. Again, like that's again, it's another tactic. You know, it's so that we focus on our differences, not on our commonality. That's another reason why American citizenship is so powerful. Before we were actually founded in 1776, our founders, yes, they were all white and some of them were slave owners, yikes, but the truth of the matter is these guys all studied, particularly, well, Jefferson and Madison specifically studied all of the prior societies since the beginning of time. And they identified what sort of government would work best for a free people. No sovereign, no divine right of kings, no, you have to be born here in order to own land, no, you have to trace back your ancestry this many years in order to vote. No, they formed a constitutional republic that has developed until now to incorporate, again, as I said, the most powerful citizen ever created on the face of the planet. Only when we honor that responsibility. And because we've gotten so distracted by Black, I'm getting pushed back for being against Latinx folks. Oh my goodness. Like, talk about want to trigger me. First of all, Latinx doesn't exist. Latino didn't even exist in the first place. And by the way, if 300 to 400 years of Spanish, occupation of the Philippines does not make me Latin, you can just go ahead with that whole term. Because again, all of it is just a fabrication to keep us all divided, as I said before.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of Filipinos, I mean, their surnames are really Hispanic, right?
Rivera, I mean, Coronado. Really.
Yeah, I mean, I can, you know, if I look at a list of names and I see that, I mean, and I don't know the person, my tendency is to immediately assume that they are, you know, Hispanic or something like that. They, you know, not Filipino, but you know, my daughter-in-law is Filipino, so you know, and I've met a lot of Filipinos along the way, and I started to learn those things. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we are Americans. We are, you know, it's not the color of our skin. I was thinking, you know, when my kids were little, as you're talking, I'm like, did I do anything, you know, when my kids were little to differentiate between race? No. You know, they go to school, they meet kids of all different backgrounds. So be it. They learn and they grow together. They play together. They study together. That's fine. I mean, you know, that's the way it should be. They, you know, I had no intention of saying, oh, you can't play with those people because they're those poor Hispanics or whatever. It's like, you know, that would be just ridiculous. But that's a lot of these lefties, you know, they have tried to segment us out into these pools, right?
Right. And that's, again, their narrative, their agenda, they're pushing, again, is division so that we do not become unified since the beginning of our country. For example, the working class group, where we had people from Italy, people from Ireland coming in, particularly to develop cities like New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia, all of the Eastern Seaboard, to be honest. Everybody was laboring all together. If in the event that people actually unified on that vein as workers uniting, what they talk about, right? They didn't want that. They said, okay, there are too many of them now to control. We have to divide them. So why don't we just create whiteness? Whiteness, again, did not exist before the 20th century, really, in earnest. To whereas they say, you're white, at least you're not black. Okay, so before it was Irish not apply, Italian not apply because of bigotry, blacks not apply. Then, again, too many people, a number now to control, let's divide them. Let's say, okay, well, at least you're not black. You can do this, you can build this skyscraper, and then you found the fact that you have the unity groups of Italian Americans of this, that, and the other, the Irish Americans of this, that, and the other, and they were able to develop certain industries like the police force and the fire department. So unfortunately, you have now 2 or 3 generations that cultural animosity might be at play, but it all stemmed back from when they tried to divide us in the first place. And when you do not have context, when you do not appreciate not only the history, but how history developed to get to this point, you only have chaos and confusion because you only literally get to focus on all the little, I don't want to say little, the less frequent bad situations are now made huge because you're so hyper focused on this and not seeing it in a broader view, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. I want to ask your opinion about Rashard Brooks and what's been happening here lately. And my question here really is that has your opinion changed in terms of Brooks's innocence or guilt based on the fact that, you know, the police officer was fired and he and another police officer are going to be charged in this case?
Well, oddly enough, the weird thing about this case is that the attorney for the decedent went to school with me in law school. So I was watching L. Chris Stewart literally is a year ahead of me at Howard Law. He was the head of trial advocacy, and I was the SBA president. So I was the school body president. So it's really funny to see him, you know, he's now this multi-million-dollar trial lawyer, which kudos to him, congratulations. So that is sort of like the interesting personal connection to the case. But having said that, I want to flag, again, going back to our faith and religion conversation, this dude was passed out wasted, okay? If you want to talk about what spirits, literal spirits, what is controlling you, most of these cases, the decedents and or victims and or whomever you want to call it, unfortunately they want to focus on the black man. Most of them are inebriated, intoxicated, full-on drug intoxicated with drugs and chemical dependency. That is the ultimate problem that no one is willing to identify. This person should not be dead, correct. This person should not have been shot in the back, correct. But he already lost his self-autonomy by getting to that point in the first place. But for him, literally losing his sense of self and losing his ability to, again, control himself and know where he was, that spirit consumed him. And now we are now dealing with the consequences of, again, there's a reason why we have prohibitions. And again, it's not going to be coming from the government. It is what you are going to imbibe and what are you going to consume that will alter your state. These states of these altered states, eventually, unfortunately, that can result where you're in a position where you can't even figure out where you are. You're so disoriented. And then all of a sudden you end up this person also attacked the police officer. You are supposed to have some deference to police. Unfortunately, you shouldn't be in a situation that you're in the receiving end of that. But you, in a civil society, you are not allowed to attack the police officer. I mean, does that warrant you dying? No, but you already overstepped your responsibility as a civilian to respect the badge and respect the fact that he is doing his job, because you literally slept on your job. Are people going to talk about that? Probably not. But in any one of these situations, if you look closely, all of them, I would say 90% of them, they're high. And I just think that that's the worst, that's the problem that our society is facing.
So, you bring up, that's some interesting thoughts there, because there's so many, I don't even know where I'm going to go with this exactly, but I'm going to throw out a bunch of things for you and let you just do it with me. One is that my colleague, Brian McNichol, when we talked about Rashard Brooks and George Floyd and all these things, is that one of the things I thought it was interesting that he said, and he grew up in Louisiana, but he's lived here for, 20 plus years probably by now, is that he thought that in terms of with policing going forward, or at least what police be out of their primary goal with a lot of these people, whether or not it's because they passed a bad $20 bill or they took, they were doing counterfeit cigarettes or whatever, was that get them to the police station and deal with them there. And we've seen too many of these cases where they've died on the streets in police custody, right, creating a lot of this backlash, with this. But there's also these proposals now about policing in terms of injecting, I think in Montgomery County, I think this is one of the places that's happening, is that police officers must now, they must interject themselves. If they're out there, if there are two of them out there and one is taking action, the other one has got to come in there and intercede in case, kind of thing like that. Plus they must maybe have to get some community service type of people involved in this. So all of a sudden it seems like they want to throw more people into the pie on to help diffuse and de-escalate the situation. But the thing to me with a lot of these though is just that when you're a law enforcement or police officer, you've been trained to do certain things in certain ways, and you have to also make a lot of split-second decisions in terms of what is life-threatening and what is not. I can't even imagine being in their shoes trying to deal with this. Do they make the right decision all the time? Yeah. No, because none of us are perfect and will not make the right decision all the time. But it really is hard for us to do kind of a Monday morning quarterback, even given video and whatnot, to say, what is, innate in them? What did they perceive as the threat and why did they act like that? I think there has to be some leeway in here.
Yeah, and again, I did goodness gracious, I posted a video, I think Monday. Unfortunately, I think it has 5+ million views on it. And it was a video of a man who was stopped. It was a traffic stop. It happened in Pennsylvania in 2017-18, where the person was stopped. There was two officers. They were Caucasian. It doesn't really matter what race they are. The guy was black. Doesn't matter what race he was. But he was sort of he couldn't walk a straight line, right? So when you can't walk a straight line, I'm sorry, that's in the police manual. So I don't know what it's described as saying. It's please be aware that this person potentially could be intoxicated. Do this, do that, do this in order to deal with said person. If it were just intoxication, that's one thing. But this guy ended up, they were trying to handcuff him. They couldn't handcuff him. And again, the reason why they handcuff you behind is so that you are restrained, right? The whole point is to be restrained because you are a threat. You're a threat to society, you're a threat to yourself, or you're a threat to the police officers. Again, how did you become a threat in the first place? You can't deflect the fact that you have become a threat to society, yourself, or the police officers. So you are restrained. What's happening again is people are fighting against that restriction, thinking that they have the ability to do so. At a point in time, you lose that ability because you, again, are a suspect for that issue, whether it's a traffic problem, whether it's intoxication. All of these are freaking violations to begin with. Speeding over 30 miles an hour is a violation, right? Now, all of a sudden, this person breaks free and then gets into their car, finds his firearm, and then shoots back at the two police officers. One of the police officers literally had to learn how to walk again and talk again because of that variable. That variable of having a firearm or any other weapon, because of society and how degraded society has become, now is a variable that police officers and all of us, to be honest, cannot ignore. And getting rid of people's Second Amendment rights is a totally separate and apart issue. It's the fact that people are literally wielding firearms that they are not allowed to have in the first place. And many of these people have prior records. So that means that they already did not care about the law to begin with. That is the problem that the left refuses to pay attention to, or they are the ones who created the problem in the first place. They are the ones who created the sense of lawlessness. They are the ones who stripped away this entire community from fatherhood. They stripped away everybody from sense of responsibility, personal autonomy, dignity, all of these things that individuals need to know in order to develop as a mature human being. The left has literally degraded for the last 30, 40 years. They are not willing to, I think they did it on purpose to get us to this point, to whereas everybody is like, oh, we don't want to be considered racist, so kumbaya, let's accept it. Oh, let's let them all out of jail. I mean, this craziness is the reason why we need conservatism. Like, it goes back to why we have to do what we're doing, because that is the only sort of antidote for our societal problem. It is not more restrictions on the police, because what the police are now reacting to is the lawlessness nature of our degraded society that the left created in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, and part of the fallout from all of this is that police officers are resigning. Good people are resigning from the police forces. Also, on the Brooks thing, I think the outcome would have been different had not the fact been that being drunk, being intoxicated, was a parole violation for Brooks, and he would have been sent back to prison or to jail, and he didn't want to do that. So I think that is that part of that in his mind. He's like, I'm not going back. I can't go back. And though he reacted that way, he abdicated all his personal responsibility long ago on that. Yeah. So, but yeah, we're going to lose a lot of good police officers because they're going to say, well, we can't live under all this scrutiny, under all these rules. People are going to question every single move that we make.
Yeah. And again, like that goes back to why, they talk about, people being frustrated and full of rage and all that stuff. And whether you want to clock it at 2013, 14, 15, 16, I don't know when people want to identify as their moment of truth, if you will. But the avenues that people are choosing, they don't end well for anyone. quite frankly. Like if you say that you're going to now force children to take anti-racism classes, I'm sorry. You do not need to teach a 5-year-old who happens to be white anti-racist classes. They have no understanding of racism, nor should they have any understanding of racism. And it's like, it's almost as if it's like such a defeatist attitude. And again, the lack of self-regulation, the lack of like appreciation for commonality, all of the high functioning ways of being we're throwing out the window. That's the end result of those options. You have alternatives. You have the fundamental traditional alternatives that our society was based on, which are conservative values, which we now call conservative values. It's literally not rocket science. But within those values, there is a value system. There is a sense of human dignity. There is a sense of self-regulation and self-governance. There is a sense of being responsible for one's actions and how you perceive yourself. There is a sense of sobriety and moderation and, again, not going through every whim that you have in the flesh. All those things are restraints on purpose. But because people aren't allowing themselves to choose to be governed by a higher self, they are wanting us to live in the most carnal, animalistic way, so that the end result of that vein is more restrictions, more regulation, more government control. All the stuff that you talked about, all those community leaders that they're saying that they want to bloat the police force, that's more bureaucrats controlling how you live your life, folks. All you had to do was not drink on probation. You know what I mean? Get yourself clean, be sober, turn the page, pay your child support, not beat your girlfriend and or your wife, whatever situation that man had, but instead you went down the path that you knew went into destruction. Again, I'm sad and heartbroken that man lost his life, but it's almost as if you tempted fate that many times. And it's not excusable, but there's a reason why that you were already under a sense of obligation to yourself to walk back from that avenue of life. And unfortunately, that was the end result. It's a sad result, but that's the result, the detriment of the darker path. And if you can't understand it unless you see it as black and white. I mean, not white and black as in race, but as in those two options. Those two options have been our options since the beginning of time. And unless you accept it, you will literally be spinning your wheels and being like, what's wrong? It's wrong. It's wrong. How can we do this? What can we do? There's only one thing you need to do. Literally, there's only one thing you need to do. Choose the brighter path. That's it.
All right, couple things before we wrap up here. One is the cancel culture is in full bloom here.
Well,
so we've got Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben's, apparently Mrs. Butterworth's pancake syrup as well, cream of wheat, which actually I'm not really sure what cream of wheat is, though I know it's been around since I've been a kid at the very least.
Love cream of wheat.
Yeah, I mean, what is cream of wheat exactly? Can you describe
do you know
it?
what grits? Do you know what grits are?
Yeah, I was wondering if it was like grits.
Yeah, it's like grits, but they're finer,
Okay.
and they're made of wheat. Grits are usually made out of corn. And so when you have cream of wheat, it creates this beautiful, yummy porridge, if you will.
Ah, okay.
And I guess it's a Southern thing, if anything.
Yeah.
But it's like grits, but it's a softer texture. It's wonderful.
I may have to try that. I mean, I've had grits before. I like them. I mean, there's stuff like that. So yeah, but it's just.
Yeah, you're gonna love cream of wheat.
Well, what do you think about all this stuff? I mean, they want, and basically, I mean, it's all this pressure for these corporations to look at their brands and say,
Yeah.
is this racist imagery? And there's all this stuff. And you know, and it's not on the list, but the thing popped up in my mind is, you know, how far will we go? What about Oreo cookies? Can that not become, you know, a racist thing for some people? I mean, how far are we going on this?
Right. So those brands, for example, have been issues since they were started, and they were formed. It was part of them were a mockery. Like, you know, if you look at those like very cartoonish caricatures that they used to have to represent these brands, they were not always polite, if you will. They were caricatures of Black people, particularly people who were domestics and or slaves. And so it does have, a lot of these have that backstory to it. Over the last, starting in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, those several different companies have changed the imagery used to a more like respectful image, if you will. But to throw them out now sort of defeats the small p progress that was forged over those 50 years. I think the brands are now sort of exude, they should have a sense of, I don't want to say like, not pride, if you will, as opposed to a concept of a negative. It should be they should be positive images, not necessarily negative images, but the names in themselves and the use of a Black face, literally, on them to sell to particularly the white home domestic housewife, it is a deep-seated history that particularly those brands have had, and it's hard not to acknowledge them. But again, we've been working on those images for 40 years, and all of a sudden people are now paying attention to it. I feel like, as a former liberal activist, I personally think it's too little too late, number one. And number two, is it just so that you feel better? Or is it really like legitimately they care about the impact that prior images had on the population? It's not a simple answer. It's not a quick fix. Like if people think that by virtue of making a statement and wearing a t-shirt, unlike this one, but another t-shirt, or changing certain imagery has the desired result, do you think any of this is going to uplift the Black community? If you literally think that that's what your end result is, fine. But if it's so that you want white people to feel like they're racist, that's not a good look. If you know what I mean.
Right. Well, and I think part of this too is a strategy that we've seen for decades that just continues to build up, which is the liberal left trying to use these things as kind of a cudgel over these corporations. That if we can exert enough pressure and get them to do this, then what, you know, they have a list. I mean, Aunt Jemima is just the beginning. Who knows what else they're going to go and do with that in that sense, right? They're going to continue to.
You can have a problem with Quaker Oats. I mean, is the Quaker Oat image considered stereotypical to Quakers?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I went to a Quaker school. I don't know if Quakers are offended by that image. You can go as far and wide as you want. But again, what is your purpose? Is it to unify? Is it to uplift? Is it to, champion positive society? Great. But if it's to just destroy everything in your wake, then don't just leave them. You know, like create other brands, create other labels, create other things that celebrate people, but then you run the risk of creating more caricatures. Just move on. You know what I mean? I'd care more about the ingredients in all of these foods. Are they healthful? Are they wholesome? Are they GMO? Are they, you know what I mean? Do they create obesity? Like, oh my word, let's focus on the things that really impact us as humanity. I would rather all of this corporate responsibility go to the products that they're offering. Is it sugar? Is it high fructose corn syrup? Like, is it like, oh my gosh, like these are the real issues.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in our family, we make the economic decision, which is that my wife's she shops a fair amount at Aldi. So I've got a lot of sugar-free Aldi brand syrup, whatever the brand is or whatever. Yeah. I don't remember, you know, unless a hotel's offering Aunt Jemima or something like that, or someone else I'm visiting, you know, I'm not getting Aunt Jemima or Mrs. Butterworth virtually anywhere.
Yeah, if you want to really do a full on, like if you want to stick it to the man, like really, if you really want to stick it to the man, freaking A, man, use maple syrup.
Yeah.
You know, use wholesome syrup. Shop at your local farmer's market and support the local produce. Or, heaven forbid, get some folks who have a bunch of like trees somewhere and work it yourself, you know what I mean? And create a label for yourself and call it Black Power Syrup. I don't care what you call it, but that is really how you affect the real change that will really change lives. Make a brand, compete, create a better, more superior product that is pure, that is wholesome, that is healthful, that identifies a positive image that you can reap the rewards in. You know, that is the issue, the financial piece, the economic difference that most people have a problem with is because you do not own the means of production. So create the darn means of production. You have the ability in this capitalist society, not the socialist society, but in the capitalist society to create your own products. Now with the advent of the internet, you can create small batches. Thank you for the literal regulations that we should have with food safety. You can follow it. It's all written. It's not obscure. Create it yourself and have at it. Or make it yourself at home. Like, all of it is just beyond the pale right now.
Yeah, I mean, and I think not, you know, I've never had his salad dressing or anything else, but Paul Newman, the actor, you know, I mean, he created a whole line of this Newman's Own stuff. Right. And I think a large percentage of the profits goes to his causes, liberal left causes or whatever. So, you know, he took matters into his own hands. He had the wherewithal to do it. But as he said, there are opportunities now because of the internet, because of 3D printing, all kinds of stuff out there. You can create your own business without having to have a lot of backing on this and do something. So you can affect the change.
Have a black, newsflash, if you could find a black-owned manufacturer of glass products, right? A black-owned producer, and it doesn't even have to be black-owned, to be honest, but I'm just trying to prove a point on how you want to empower Black people, like in that vein. You have a Black-owned and operated glass manufacturer, plastic top creator, I don't know, labeler, whatever, printer, and the person who creates the syrup. Okay, that's 5 companies right there. That could arguably be 500 people who you employ to create your said product. Put your emphasis and your energy into competition, not, oh, let's, you know, chastise these folks, because is that image at this point in time holding you back? No, but your financial means might be. So create them, because this is the country that you literally, no other country in the world can you do that, folks. That's why everybody comes here from the world. Ugh. It really aggravates me, Don. It really does.
All right. The last thing here in the next couple of minutes here, just So
Yeah.
I saw this morning Amy Klobuchar basically has removed her name from the short list for Joe
Oh,
Biden's VP selection. And I think she said basically that she thinks that it ought to go to a person or a woman of color. And as far as
yeah.
I know, that Kamala Harris and I guess Stacey Abrams, Susan Rice, I think those are the main contenders on this point. But what I want to, what I'm wondering here though is that, is this an example? Are the Democrats kind of playing the race card, or are they pandering to the base or others because they're saying it's going to be a woman, it's going to be a black woman,
Yeah.
so that's why you have to vote for us? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, what's going on there is that they're losing people like me. Let's be honest. I mean, they already lost me, literally. They literally lost me personally in 2015, 16. So from then to now, there were already enough quote, black people or women to have already voted for the devil incarnate President Donald J. Trump. So that's totally hyperbolic. That is not real. I do not believe that about our president, let's be honest, but that's what they believe in. They already know that they're in trouble from 2016. They never again thought or questioned that someone like me would leave, right? Let alone support President Trump, let alone become a very vocal, active, and effective advocate for breaking free, right? You've got Brandon Straka, you've got, Candace Owens, you've got all these other people that you've never heard of before. Will Johnson, you have all these activists that are online, for example, that are freeing people's minds to no end, right? Regardless of what color you are, Americans aren't really supporting, maybe in the lower level, but definitely not on the presidential level. They are not going to support that establishment. They're not going to support Joe Biden. They know about Burisma by now. You know what I mean? So like, they know enough to know that they'd rather support President Trump than the DNC and or Joe Biden. Joe Biden literally has to create angel wings to come out of his back in order for all of us who have left the plantation to even believe and trust anything that comes out of his mouth. He is the one who literally created pushed the 1994 crime bill. So, he was one of the main proponents. The reason why these people who are getting shot in the back are the way they are because of their parents and how their parents were stuck in jail. I don't know what the people's actual parents were, but I'm talking about society's ills. That whole generation that was screwed by Joe Biden and President Clinton and Hillary Clinton and continuously by Kamala Harris. I mean, they literally think that we're idiots. They literally think that we don't know that these are the people, the establishment, who ruined our society in the first place. So, in order for them to deal with the true sick, sad reality of them being the ones who have destroyed society as individuals, they literally have to put up window dressing in order for us to ignore the truth that's in front of us. So in their, again, playbook, they've run out of every single thing. They created a freaking pandemic. They created, before that, the impeachment trials. Before that, they, put in, what did they do before that? Said that, he didn't win in the first place. All of it, now they literally have to, they think, in their opinion, put up a black face and say, that's enough. Literally, they think we're all idiots. And some of us are. Some of us are oblivious. Some of us have literally drinking the Kool-Aid. And then most of us don't know. And because they're so afraid, again, ruling through fear, they see me being ridiculed. They see people like me being ostracized. They see people like me being berated for having free thought and expression and breaking rank. So they are by default having to be stuck with that one option. So with all those freaking variables, that is what the campaign cannot deal with. The Democratic Party, I was a part of it very actively, needs data. They need to pinpoint who and what votes they can count on. They have always, since the beginning of, well, not the beginning of time, since the Civil War, and I would say the 1900s, if you will, 1920s, 1930s, definitely 1960s onward, the Black vote has been their bread and butter. Without the Black vote, they will never win a national election ever again. They know it. I know it. One of the main reasons why I left, but all the more reason, that's the reason why they literally are creating riots in order for people to choose this and not that. It is a sick, sad truth that is how the DNC and the Democratic Party is working. They freaking kill people called Seth Rich in order to block truth from coming out. They will not stop at anything. They will not stop at anything in order for them to get power again. And unfortunately, that's the truth that some of us now are aware of, but still many people are in the dark.
All right.
Yay!
I think we'll leave it there with that last statement and everything. Once again, thanks for joining me today again, Liz. It's always great to have you. Thanks everyone out there for joining us as well. Please stay safe. That's right. Drain the swamp. Stay safe. Stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't let anybody else tell you anything else otherwise. And,
and really quick, and don't forget to check out my new website. It's Americans Again. It's a big announcement, americansagain.com.
Oh, great. All right. That sounds fantastic. Americansagain.com. We love you, Liz. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll see everybody next week. Have a great weekend, wherever you may be.